Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Jackson. I'm the president of the Jamaica Animation Nation Network. This is the professional organization representing the animation industry. Alright, so what I'm going to talk to you about today is pretty much the sustainability of the animation sector. It's a question I get asked a lot, is animation sustainable here in Jamaica? And I mean, it's a good question. All over the world, animation is big business. You may have heard or you may have seen in the papers where they talk about it being a $230 billion industry worldwide. And pretty much Jamaica wants to get a piece of that pie. And we have to thank JANN primarily for bringing animation back to Jamaica in a big way in collaboration with the World Bank, MSTEM, and the Canadian High Commission. I say in a big way because animation existed here before, like back in the 80s. I don't know how many of you may have remembered like the Quench Aid commercial or the Vienna sausage commercial where you had a little cartoon sausage running across the screen. But pretty much animation didn't take off in a big way back then, as in studios weren't being created, that sort of thing. In the 90s it sort of resurged when a fellow who lives, I believe, in England named George McBean came down with UNICEF and was trying to introduce it again to UE and EDNA, but again it didn't really take off from that point. But now what JANN has done is pretty much partnered with the Canadian High Commission and World Bank to bring it to our shores in a much more sustainable way, focusing heavily on training and job creation. From this spawned several studios. There is GSW Animations, which most people know. They are well noted for achieving actual co-production contracts with Disney. So they've done co-production with at least 2 studios for animated series that are shown on Disney and Nickelodeon. There is Al Sion, which is, they are the creators of Cabin Chronicles. You may have heard of Cabin Chronicles or seen it. That was aired on Flow and TVJ, sponsored by St. Mary's Chips, actually. And there is Skyray Studios. They do a lot of commercial work, both for local and overseas companies, and they do educational programming and interactive things. Notable mentions would be like Mental Tron, which he is a freelancer, and this is just to show you the diversity of the job scope of animation. You could start a studio, or you can be a freelancer or a boutique studio, which is like a 1 to 5 man shop. But Mental Tron was a self-taught 3D animator who he exploded a few years ago when he did some animation with some celebrities like Bounty Killer, Beanie Man, Usain Bolt, caricaturing them in a very comedic way, and since then he's landed jobs animating for commercials and TV programming that's aired on TVJ and CBN. Notable mentions would be like Night Vision Media, who do a lot of educational interactive software, and Listen Me Caribbean, who they have a interactive comic called League of Maroons. So the main initiative right now is business process outsourcing. This is working on an animated series for a studio from another country. They look at Jamaica as, or I should say, they look at the Caribbean as the next big area to look towards outsourcing, because in the 80s it was Japan. Japan they were co-producing with American studios to produce things like Thundercats and Silverhawks and G.I. Joes. In the 90s it was the Koreans doing Simpsons and the animations that were popular then, and then in like the early 2000s it was Indians, and now they're moving to the Caribbean, because what usually happens is you kickstart a country's animation industry, you get them involved in business process outsourcing. This is how they get the experience that they need to develop the quality of animation, that the world wants to consume. And then as time goes by and the they get better at the craft, they go into original content, which is where the real money is. And as they get into more and more original content, they kind of reduce the amount of outsourcing work they take in. So pretty much it starts to leave a void, and they have to basically move to another region to look for animators. And right now the Caribbean is the big area they're looking at, especially because of our close proximity and the fact that we have the same time zone as them. So they don't have to be waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to call somebody in India to find out where's the project reached, because you're trying to call them during their work hours. We have the same work hours as them, and Jamaica being the largest English-speaking Caribbean country, we speak the same language as them, and we have a lot of similar, cultural nuances. So, we understand a little more about their culture, which helps a lot in conveying certain things in animation. So, we see where it's been successful so far. The studios I mentioned have been around some of them have been around for a few years, some of them have just started up. Like Panda Software does a lot of interactive software and gaming. But, these collectively, they hire about 50 animators, and they're looking to hire more. But now this is where the training comes in, because it's a skill-based career. So pretty much the government, JANN, MSTEM, World Bank have all collectively been developing the training sector. So HART offers training in animation, UE is about to offer their degree, UTech is about to offer their degree, Edna Manley, NCU, are all getting in to build the capacity so we can have that critical mass to take on some of these jobs, because these jobs actually require a lot of manpower, just the sketches, animations, storyboards, the acting, the music, and all of that. And luckily for us, we have a very talented pool of people in all those fields. The challenge is, of course, getting into animation can be a bit expensive, especially if you're getting into the business process outsourcing. Reason being is, they'll require you to have certain type of equipment, servers, software, and that can be expensive. But of course, like the studios that have started before, there's a means to get them, loans, funding, and of course, going to marketplaces like Kidscreen. These are marketplaces, overseas, where you get to meet people from different studios. You pretty much pitch your studios to them, and this is how they determine whether or not they choose you to do work with them. And it's based on the quality of work that you can produce. It's based on the time in which you can produce this quality. And of course, all of this comes down to the training and skills provided. Other challenges, of course, are distribution, which if we're going into original content, we need to have our distributed. That's the biggest challenge for original content. And there are ways and means going to these same marketplaces, going to festivals. Festivals like the Reggae Film Festival have done a lot in giving local animators exposure. Mental Joe, Coretta Singer, and even Al Sayun, they've all won awards through Reggae Film Festivals, and it's giving them some exposure, same with the international scene. Other challenges, of course, when it comes to outsourcing, is contract negotiations. Pretty much Hollywood has their standard in how they negotiate contracts, and you really need to look at getting lawyers involved in the process. Like for example, a lawyer that understands film production agreements, like a Samuda and Johnson, who have ties with the Film Commission, so they understand the legal agreements that need to take place. And why that's important is because a lot of times these studios try to lock you into a certain price, and it's based on delivered product, not based on how much work you actually do. So if they're overrun, sometimes you kind of get stuck and locked into that price, which can be disadvantageous for the studios. And it requires a legal mind that understands film contracts to ensure you don't get caught up in that kind of loophole. With all this said, the Jamaica Animation Nation Network does all it can to pretty much facilitate all of these. We have a buyer's market, or developing a buyer's market where people who have original content can pretty much, talk to us about getting their original content created and distributed, and we'll review their content and see if it's pitch ready or see if it's ready to go to these marketplaces overseas. Same with the business outsourcing in the studios. They pretty much, we assist them in finding marketplaces, finding these entities that they can do co-productions with. And as time goes by and all of this capacity builds, the market becomes more and more sustainable. And it's on its way as more and more studios keep popping up. So I've gotten the time signal, so I thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We want to thank collectively Yanni, Nolly, I don't know Kevin that much, but I'll call him Kevy, for really delivering to us informative and